What is the what is the show
Money.
me the money. Show 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 me the money.
Show me the money.
Money. Oh, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Roberto Monaco here. And today I have the king, the heavyweight champion of compliance, Dr. John Davila, my brother. What's up?
Heavyweight. Yes, thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, brother. Well, the reason I was showing money here is because Dr. John, we live both in South Carolina, and I live in Mount Pleasant. And the other day he came here, super nice, and he has a present for me. He actually a bottle of wine. He's a wine expert.
How was it? Was the bottle good?
No. I'm saving for a special occasion.
No reason for that. No reason for that.
And then he'll say, "Hey man, let's do an interview for our friends."
That's true.
And he goes, "Let's do it." So what's the topic? He goes, "God compliant cash." And I'm like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Okay, that's gonna be good." So I have zero clue. Zero clue. He's gonna talk about. All I know is that he's my brother. He's the king of compliance. I have some dollar bill, and the title is "God compliant cash." What's up, my brother?
Yeah, okay, you got cash. You got cash. It's great. Yeah. All right.
What's going on, brother? How you doing, man? Doing good?
I'm doing good. Doing good. I wish the rain would go away. We live in sunny South Carolina, except for right now. It's been cloudy the last 3-4 days. But
no good. So what's the idea about compliant cash? What's the isn't cash compliant? What are you talking about?
Really, what we're talking about here is I run into a lot of people that tell me all the time that they're a cash practice, and because they're a cash practice, everything is fine. Like they have no worries, no issues. And really what I wanted to do is really to talk about how to be able to really have not a cash practice, but a cash upfront practice that creates audit-proof income. Because I mean, it's almost as if we're discussing like remember the TV show Mad Men?
Yeah.
Right. And in Mad Men, when the main character talks about if we don't like what we're talking about, the thing you have to do is change the topic. Okay. And the truth is, in this situation, it's impossible just to change the topic. I mean, we can do that. We change the topic and make it about compliance and everything else. And you could, but the truth is that cash is really, really simple. You just need to know what are the steps to get there, because we don't own a gym. That makes sense. We're not gym owners where someone pays us money, they use the gym or don't use the gym, and they don't have, that's not how it works. So once the federal government gets involved in this whole situation, it's not quite the same anymore. So, the whole idea is how do we...
Can you unpack that? So people who... I think we have two audiences. One was the chiro who is doesn't run a cash practice yet. And that's one audience. Maybe you can speak to that person, to that doctor first. And the second one is the one who is cash practice, who thinks that, hey, that's all there is to it. So can you elaborate and unpack a little bit for both of them?
Yeah. So the person who from a cash practice standpoint, there's really the problems that come with it really are stem from them thinking because they got paid, they're done.
Okay.
I got paid and it's a transaction almost as if you sold someone a gallon of milk.
Okay.
Right? So we give me some milk, they took the money, they walk away. I'm done with all this. There's no issues, no problems, there's nothing. Right. So that's not necessarily, I mean, people need to think it's more than that. Okay. And it's really more than that because there's a component of risk management that goes with it. Right. So how are you able to risk manage what's going on? And that's the one part. The other part about insurance is really interesting because a lot of people think that what I do is I talk about insurance a lot. It's not really true. And that if people hire me, it's because they're insurance practice. And the funny part is that I'd say 70% of our clients, 80% of our clients are collecting the majority of their money across the desk. And they consider themselves to be a cash practice because they're still giving a super bill, but they hire us because of the risk side of things. So really it's really about how do I mitigate any risk on the backside so the money I collect is audit proof. And I don't mean audit proof from an insurance company, I mean audit proof from patient complaints. Which
can you give an example? Can you give an example?
Yeah.
Can you give an example of a doctor who was practicing cash only? And maybe made a mistake or got in trouble or didn't see, had a blind spot.
Actually, a good friend of yours. We've talked this story a couple different times. Someone who's probably watching. Someone that I talked to numerous times. He said, "Oh, I don't need it. I'm fine." And then what ended up happening was he had a patient complain, and when the patient complained, they ended up with a situation where the patient wanted their money back. And the doctor said, well, you used half of your services or 3/4 of your services. And you only get this much back. Well, I want all of it back because you didn't help me. And he had gone through the situation probably 3 or 4 different times. And he got tired of writing the check, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 back to the patient because either you pay me back. And it's unfair because it's almost as if, it's like The Godfather. Remember The Godfather? You think you're going to put your gun against they're going to hold you hostage. You know what I mean? And that's really what it is. It's extortion. Either you give me my money back or I tell the board that you hurt me. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, from a risk management standpoint, if you don't have the goods, and if you play Texas Hold'em, right? Cards, poker, it's called the nuts. If you don't have the nuts, the best hand, you lose. And he got tired of writing the check. And he called me up one day. He said, you know what? I'm done arguing with everybody. What do I do so I don't do this again? And okay, fine. So these are the steps. And I swear to you, about a month and a half after we were done implementing the entire system, he had a patient come back in and say, listen, I want my money back. And he said, no. And they said, I'm going to tell the board that you hurt me. Okay, fine. And lo and behold, 3 weeks later, a guy from the board comes in and says, I want to look at your notes. And the doctor says, sure, here's everything. Reviewer looks at it and says, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Love that.
There's nothing here because that's the certainty we're talking about. And we've seen it. I've seen it in both directions. You know what I mean? And one of the worst ones I've ever seen, I was in New Jersey a couple of years ago speaking at a convention, and the guy comes to me and he says, what do I do? I have somebody who is have somebody who came back to me and said, they didn't tell me they were in an accident. And they told me they were paying cash, no big deal. And we did it that way, no problem at all. And then, the problem is I don't take notes on cash patients.
What is the
what? So the patient wants the notes for their PI case. What do I do? I'm like, yes. So
what is the percentage of the chiropractors out there in your experience? Right? I'm not talking about just like in general. The percentage of cash-only chiros, what's the percentage of them to think they don't take notes or they don't take notes properly?
Oh, man. I don't know that number in particular. I know the people who come to us.
Just a gut feeling.
I say people come to us for help. 1 in 4 of the people I run across really don't take a proper note. About 25%.
Okay.
Yeah, and the problem is that if you look at and there's good news wrapped in there somewhere. I mean, if you look at Medicare's numbers, it's ridiculous as far as the post-payment denial rate. But the problem isn't the post-payment denial rate. The problem is of all the records that are requested, 80% of the people don't respond, and I think that's a worrying number. I think the people who don't respond because they're afraid maybe they don't have the right records. So that may be a little bit of an issue. So. That kind of thing.
Well, say my camera. Hold on. Say my camera. My camera's unplugged. That's nice.
No, there you are.
I'm back, brother. I'm back.
So, that's unfortunately that's what happens. And and I don't want to get into the insurance side of stuff or review stuff. This is really like, how are you able to make sure from like if you're dealing in cash where you give a super bill, that's really the important thing. How do you do it? And there's really, for me, there's really 2 major components. And the first one is getting the patient. There's 3. Obviously, the first one is making sure that you have the best records, regardless of who's paying. And I think the first point is document the patient, not the payer. Document the patient, not the payer. There's no such thing as cash notes.
Can you unpack that one?
Sure. Well, the patient, like the guy who I talked about in New Jersey, he documented the fact that they were cash, therefore he didn't take notes. Because if the patient's cash and insurance isn't involved, then who cares?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's not good because
I see. I got it.
So we don't. And plus, from a code perspective, there's no such thing as a cash visit. No such thing as a cash visit. No such thing as a cash diagnosis. It's as the patient presents, that's how you're supposed to take your note. So that's really the first big one. The second big one really becomes when you describe what the patient's going to get, you have to go ahead and lay out exactly what the payment parameters are. And because to me, and in my experience, the biggest, we'll call it the biggest creator of complaints is financial problems or financial misunderstandings. Those are the biggest reasons why I see board complaints.
So, for example, can you give me an example? I'm more about examples.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in this situation, what we're talking about is the client we're talking about before. Someone you and I both have the same client.
Yeah.
Where the patient basically said, "I want my money back."
Okay.
And if you don't deal with them correctly, they will go to the board. That's the number one reason why we deal with board complaints is patients complaining about the financial arrangements. So what we found when we went back and we found 80% of the doctors who give a treatment plan, it's handwritten and it looks just like chicken scratch.
Okay.
So something that is a little bit more professional, something that explains what active care and wellness care is, something that explains what the patient should get back from insurance. And if you want to explain that, even if it's a super bill, we call that, the insurance contribution to care as compared to what insurance will pay, those types of things. If you can do that, you'll end up in a lot better place because now the more it's out in the open as far as what the patient should expect back, the better off you are. And we found that as soon as you start explaining that to patients, the game is over because there's no complaint. Everything's documented, it's all there, and it becomes a lot more simple for everyone to understand. Okay.
So for the doctors who are mostly insurance based and they're moving
too.
And they're moving more towards a cash base. That's what they're looking for to do. What are some of the mistakes that you feel that made a transition from insurance to cash? What's some things they have to look for?
I don't think there's really to go from. I think the question really becomes going from in-network to out-of-network.
Okay.
And then giving the patient super bill really is what that is. So we say your cash. Really, what we're talking about is how do I get out of network? And we see that quite often. The people are tired of dealing with XYZ insurance company, and I totally understand. The question just becomes, how do you unwind that situation? And if you do, you have to make sure that you call the carrier and ask them how long it takes. The last thing you want, and we've seen this with a couple major carriers, if you're in Florida or Georgia, you know exactly what I'm talking about, or in California for that matter. If you just quit seeing them and just start charging them cash because I'm done with them, they will hold you to the contract and give you a hard time. So it's really important to know that if you want to become out of network, then you have to do it correctly. Call them and say, I want out, and they'll give you a time that it takes to unwind that situation. Now, once you're there, yeah, sure. Now you can go ahead and manage everything correctly as far as here's your super bill, good luck, you can get paid, I want my money, and that's basically it from a transaction standpoint. But the question still becomes, unless you do it correctly, will the insurance company repay the patient? And that's the next thing that comes up next. And that can be a problem. Like for example, we had somebody who is in New Jersey, a different guy in New Jersey, who was out of network, total cash, get super bill, pay me. The insurance company came back to him and said, we want a couple $1 million back. He goes, but I don't get paid by you. I'm not involved in this at all. And the problem is that, well, that's true, but you see, you gave the patient a super bill. The patient's super bill was sent to us. You never documented the super bill, and we paid based on that. So doctor's like, well, I don't care. I'm not going to deal with you at all. Well, we want the records. Well, I'm not going to give you the records. I'm not network. And then the insurance company goes, well, under HIPAA, we have rights to the records. So under federal law, give you the records. Okay. So the guy gives them the records, and they find out later that, the guy didn't document anything. He just did it and said, because I'm cash, it doesn't matter. Here's the stuff. So, that kind of situation, it doesn't end well unless you understand all the rules. So, it's like, well, I'm not paying you and you hold the checks for me because since you're not paying me, it doesn't matter. And they basically told him either you pay us or we'll go ahead and let the federal government know that you instigated a false claim because you didn't document what was there. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to look at it and everything else. And trust me, if you get a super bill, you're in the game. It's just a matter now of how do you protect yourself. And that's really from a cash perspective. How are you able to do that?
I know you've done in our conversations. I know you have helped several doctors to increase their care plan or to monetize better their care plan, to present better. Can you give an example? Can you elaborate? Let's talk a little bit about that.
That's the next part. See, what we do is if you're going to transition to that component of your practice, transition that component of your practice over from insurance over to cash, it's really important to go ahead and we'll call it maximize the patient's ability to either get reimbursed or to go ahead and maximize what you can get out of a case as far as a case value. The only problem is, and we've seen this because we've been doing this now for close to 10 years as far as managing this component. What we do is, and give me a minute to explain how. What we do is we have the doctor, when they start with us, they tell us what it is that they sell. And then once we know what it is that they sell, we figure out what their cost is to deliver the service. Once we know what the cost is to deliver the service, we go ahead and work everything backwards to make sure that what they're doing from a sales perspective is profitable. Mm-hmm. And what's really funny is, this is sad, but 92% of all care plans that we review lose money.
No. Come on. Can you go back I didn't hear that right. 92% of the care plans that you review lose money. Is that a marketing strategy, loss leader? They come up, they lose money in the first year to make money in the second year. So 92%. And how's that possible? How's that possible?
Well, you see, because what ends up happening is the majority of the care plans that people create, there's a component where they continue to discount downward in order to go ahead and close somebody. And their cost per visit, if you take their cost per visit and divide it across all visits, they have a certain cost per visit.
Yep.
The problem is, when I say not profitable, I don't mean in order to keep the doors open. What I'm talking about, there's three components to a care plan that people don't realize when they're talking about cost. There's cost to go ahead and keep the doors open. There's cost to be able to live, so you don't live underneath your adjusting table. And then there's cost to go ahead and create corporate profit. 92% of all care plans don't take into account corporate profit. So that's the reason why chiros have a hard time paying taxes at the end of the year, or they can't improve equipment, or they can't paint the walls, or they can't, all these different things. The only reason why they're semi-profitable in most situations, and most chiros are paycheck to paycheck as far as how they make their money, is the only reason why it's like that is because in the active care component, that's a profitable situation. If they're selling any amount of wellness care, they're in almost 98% of the time in wellness care, that care plan loses money.
So that's shocking to me. That's shocking. I never heard that before.
That's the reason why. That to me. See, like you, right? You have two kids. Daughter's the oldest, son's the baby, yep. Right? Me too. Same thing. It's almost as if with your daughter, there's mistakes you made. And it's like, that's my favorite child when they first come. And then the second one, you're like, oh, you know what? I know I won't make the same mistakes again. So maybe I can make the second one my favorite one because they'll do better than the first one because I messed up the first time, right? It's this, it's the same thing with my products, right? So what we do, our macros, we're the first baby. Oh my God, the first baby is so cool, everything else. And then people would use the macros and get audited and lose and call me and go, Davila, you suck. And I go, what did I do? And they used them. I used your macros and I got audited and I lost. And I started to realize that when I looked at what they were doing, they didn't understand what their care plans looked like. So the second product, which we created to go ahead and fix the first one, I realized was so much more powerful because if you can take notes and still not have an idea of what's going on from a clinical perspective, and the notes don't match the patient, and you're screwed either way. But if you can look at the care plan value and the care plan what it is, you can bypass all of these things. So you can figure out what your coding would look like. You can figure out what your cost would look like. You can figure out where your costs are in the care plan, what your values are. And that, to me, we fixed more problems looking at that first.
Oh, dude, I just had a breakthrough. I literally had a breakthrough. The breakthrough is
never fixed by notes.
Here's a breakthrough I had. In speaking, persuasive speaking, you start with your offer, right? Technically, if you have a enrollment form, like selling an event or coaching, so why are you selling? Oh, I'm selling this. So you're going to build up your talk based on that offer, right? That's how we started. So basically what you just said was like all the compliance, everything else, the notes should be based on what is the offer, what's your selling, what's the care plan. And considering the three type of costs: cost of being open, cost of paying the doctor, and living. Profit. I love that, brother.
And that's the reason why think about it. Why? Here's a great question. Why can't more chiropractors afford to use us, me and you?
Yeah, lack of resources. Yeah.
And watch the sales. Watch the sales. Why don't you say you're the average cost in what you do? I mean, from a sales perspective, that's dumb. I don't know why did you pick that fee? Well, it's the average. Do you realize when you say you're the average in something, that to 50% of the people, you're a liar?
It's true.
I mean, if the fee goes from 50 to 100 and you say, well, I'm going to pick 75 because it's the average. Well, if half the people pay less than 75, you're not the average anymore, right? You're the most expensive they've ever seen.
Yep.
So, it's one of those things that's the reason why when we start working with people, the initial component to what we do is care plan values to be able to create all the other stuff. Because it's almost like the piano, right? Left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand. Together, they make beautiful, beautiful music together. If you put one, it's going to sound one way, one is going to sound the other, but together, they're perfect.
Yep.
That's the way you should look at your care plans versus your documentation. Your care plans create one thing and your documentation backs it up. So you have the high notes and the low notes together and it sounds great. Unless they're conceived at the same time, the right hand has no idea what the left hand's doing.
I love it, bro. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You're the king. You're the king of the analogy, brother. For you, for for real. I love it.
But it never. Honestly, Roberto, it never works because you don't know what's coming. And I'll put it to you this way. Ready? If you were a chiropractor, what would be the top two things you would be thinking about when you were going to adjust somebody?
Well, the person.
What I'm going to do, what the person's got going on, what I'm going to find, all these different things, right? You can list 1,000 things before you get to my number one: compliance. Which is truth that people need to hear, because you won't manage compliance at the table. That's the reason why what we do with you before you step foot in the practice has to be done from a CEO's perspective, not from I'm going to manage everything else at the table. If you don't manage it beforehand, it's not going to work. You'll never do it correctly. That's like, I don't know if you ever jumped out of an airplane, right? You ever go skydiving? No. I can guarantee you this. When you go to jump out of an airplane, before you leave the ground, they go, when we get to 15,000 feet, we're pulling the ripcord. They're not going, oh, well, we'll just wait. Wow, the ground's getting really, really.
I love it, man. I love it, brother. Dr. John Davila, my brother, been doing business together for many years, hanging out together for many years. And there's information below here, his website. Can you talk a little bit about your website, what you do, the services you have, brother? People interested, reach out to you. Yeah.
The first thing, we obviously Custom Chiro Solutions is the website, customchirosolutions.com. And obviously, yes, we act as your virtual compliance officer. And if you were to think of, as an analogy as Roberto keeps talking about, but if you were to think of a swan and how graceful it is when it floats across the top of the water, that's what we consider. We consider ourselves that process for you as a client, because when someone stands by the lake and they see a swan float, they go, "Oh, look how graceful it is." When a patient is there and they see how you adjust and how you deal with them and how people come in and how all those different things, they think, "Oh, how graceful is this place?" beneath the surface, there is not one thing that's graceful about a swan. If I take a swan, put it on the water, I mean, it waddles, right? Also, beneath the surface, the patient has no idea how hard it is to code, document, set up care plans, bill insurance, collect insurance, bill the patient, all those different things. So all those things that are beneath the surface, that's what we manage, but it must be managed based upon your care plan. If it isn't managed based upon your care plan, then it's the two hands are not connected. You have one doing this and the other one doing this at the same time, and it just won't work. And unless they're managed together at the same time, we've seen it over and over and over again, it just doesn't work. So, if you really want to create a situation where you have, a cash practice that's creating not just audit-proof income, but true, like no one's touching me type stuff, or no one can touch me type stuff. The reality is that you just don't, it isn't just something that happens. It's something that you actually have to work towards, and creating all these different things to mitigate risk are not an insurance practice issue. They're a practice in America issue. Because the truth is, the only true cash practice that's out there is one in Spain.
Which you have a couple of clients too in Spain. I'm sure.
I know. I actually was just saying that because I know you have your Barcelona thing, but I mean, those are truly cash practices. I mean, Costa Rica, Spain, Italy. I mean, Mexico for that matter. I mean, all those different things. But in Canada, don't even forget, the people in Canada, you have risk management also. There's a Blue Cross Blue Shield in Canada. So, all these different people have risk levels that people have to mitigate. And if you're in an area where it's straight cash, then great. Unfortunately, US, that's not quite the situation. But, that whole thing of how do you create compliance, it is really a goal that you attain before you go into the office.
Love it. Brother Dr. John Davila will be one of our tailgate speakers coming up. We have our influencing from the front event for the virtual presenter, October 9th, 10th, 11th. There's a link below here. And this year we developed something really cool, really special. We're going to have these tailgating sessions before actually the event. So inside our private Facebook group for the participants, we're going to have experts like Dr. John Davila sharing some valuable information. And his topic is going to be about virtual compliance, because right now, I think virtual consultations, virtual, how you talk to patients, how the systems, man, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
It is.
So I'm sure.
And the government keeps pushing that envelope to open wider and wider and wider to go ahead and get the ability for people to see their doctor without having to actually go somewhere at this point in time. So I think I read it, virtual consults are up 400%.
That's amazing.
The last 6 months. So yeah,
it was amazing. And we talk a lot with the doctors, and they want to know more about virtual consultations. And obviously there's the compliance side, and you're the king, brother. So you're doing a tailgate session.
Sweet.
My brother, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Much love, amigo. Can't wait to hang out soon. Adios, brother. Bye.
Take care. Thanks, brother.